Hi, this is Ken from the Word Bible Software Community and the Freeplane Community. I wanted to share a useful page and a useful tool that's part of this page that's helped me a lot to overcome some of my bad memory. I've had a lifetime of faulty memory. I've always been frustrated trying to remember things, especially big blocks of text, particularly scriptures from the Bible. But this site and this technique, the strategy, has given me hope. I've memorized several chapters of several Bible books, and I'm very impressed with this. It's the only thing that's kind of worked for me. This is the first of a video series that's going to expand on this strategy and this method. It supplements the Word because you can more easily learn Bible passages, which is a natural part of Bible study, and even long passages, even chapters. And you use the Word, I use the Word, as a source for scripture passages to plug into this tool. And I use Freeplane as to organize big structure blocks of text and organize and structure them. And I use Freeplane also as flashcards, and that'll be part of a future video, as well as how to use the Word as a supplement for this technique. I highly recommend that you look this site up and study it. I'll provide the link in the bottom below the video, but it shows how the brain works when you're trying to remember things. And I'll just sort of summarize, but you should read the text here, that there's two functions in the brain. Neurons send and receive signals, and synapses are the pathways for those signals traveling between the neurons, rather. And you want those pathways to be strong and deep and robust and efficient. So as you read through the text of this page, you'll see that there are two ways that people go about memorizing things. One is they read things over and over and over again. The problem with that is that it's slow and that it's a less efficient way to use how the brain works, because you're using a different pathway than the pathway that's used as you actually remember things. The other way people learn is by recall. And that's what this is all about. It's supplying the basic bare-bone cues that help you recall the actual words. So it works a lot faster. It cooperates with the way that the brain works. It uses the same pathways as when you actually remember something. But you do need to kind of prime the pump. So you need to start with those bare-bone cues, and that's where this comes in, by converting the words in what you're trying to remember or memorize into initials. But again, go ahead and read this page for all the details. I just kind of skipped over a lot of stuff. But it uses a tool you can just scroll down here, and you plug the text that you're trying to remember into this pane, then you press convert, and the initials come out here. So in this post, the author uses the Gettysburg Address. Here it is, and that's what he uses for his example. I'm going to take the first paragraph of this and copy it, move down into this input box, and just paste it. Now, in future videos, I'm going to talk about how to do a lot of streamlining and whatnot in some other applications, in text editors and in Freeplane. But right now, I'm just going to do the straight functionality of this site. So I press the convert button, and there's the initials. There's the text. There's the initials. So just to review the basic process, you get your text from somewhere else. Here I got it from this page. You can get it from any web page. You can get it from any source at all. And you paste it in here, press the convert button, and here's where the initials come out. Now you can use this as a pretty simple flashcard system, just by scrolling. Now all I'm doing is looking at the initials, and I can try to recite them. You probably want to start out by looking at both of them and maybe get part of 4 and 7 years ago our fathers brought forth, 4 and 7 years our fathers brought forth, and just kind of do comparisons until you can say these words just by looking at the initials. Then you can use this as a flashcard kind of a thing. Ultimately, what you want to do is get to a point where you're not even looking at the initials and saying it. And if you run into trouble, you can kind of go back here to refresh yourself on the initials, or up to here to refresh yourself on the text. So that's the basic process of this page, and it works really well just as it is. I've kind of, over the years of using this, I've developed a few little tweaks that I'd like to share with you. The first is that I can at least get a lot better mileage out of this if I start chunking it. So I'm going to widen this pane here. I'm just going to go through, and a lot of times I get a good idea about some chunking by just looking at the punctuation. But you can also just kind of go through and kind of read it to yourself and get a feel for the cadence. 4 and 7 years ago, and then I'll hit the enter key. I like to kind of indent, so I press the space bar 4 times, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'll copy that so I can reuse it again. Our fathers brought forth. I'm going to break that again, put in on this continent a new nation. And what about the nation? Well, it was conceived in liberty and dedicated to, and then I'm just going to put in some more spaces here. You could come down here again and kind of do some indenting. I don't think I want to do that. I kind of find that this way of doing things links this proposition to this whole area here. So now we've got a little bit of a kind of a structure to it and chunks. So now we can go ahead and do that. Press the convert button, and it keeps that indenting, keeps the chunks together. So now you can go through the same process of trying to learn this way as a flashcards. I find that this structuring helps me better understand the meaning. And one of the fundamental principles of memorization is that the more or the better you understand the meaning, the easier it is to remember. It's like trying to remember random numbers. There's no structure, so it's very difficult to remember. The second tweak I've developed is to change some of these initials into symbols. You can see here there's several A's. 4 and 7 years ago, our father brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty, and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. So there's a bunch of A's, and just looking at it, A's can represent a lot of different words. So some of these we can streamline, like we can turn 4 scores and we could just make that an ampersand. Let's see, dedicated, and we can do the same with that. And this is kind of clumsy, just going through and doing this manually, although it may help reinforce the process for you. But there's other, and in future videos I'll show you how you can use text editors to, and FreePlane also, to automate this process and streamline it. Also to do some parts of streamlining this structuring as well. But okay, it starts with 4 score, so we'll just make that a 4. Fourscore, and this is represents 7, so we'll just make it 7. And you can probably get a better idea by just looking here and maybe even changing the letters here. 4 and, whoops, that's not right, and 7, our fathers brought, and here this may throw you off or may not. 4th, brought forth a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated. And 2, if it's the word to, TWO, or this word, you can also change that to just the letter 2. The proposition that all men are created equal. And it's just a matter of scanning through and see where you can substitute. Now, once we've done it up here, it's a simple matter, just reconvert. Okay, that didn't work. So sometimes this needs to be refreshed, but before you do that, make sure you copy this text that you've already invested some work in, and then just refresh, paste back in here, and I like to, so you don't see any word wrap, I like to expand that, and then the convert button. Now it's got all of these, Fourscore and 7. Once you've got these symbols in, it seems to be, I mean, you don't have to spend any mental effort to try to figure out what's that F stand for, or what does this A stand for. It immediately stands for something you can sound out just by saying 4 and 7 and dedicated to. So that's the other tweak. This has really helped me a lot too. The final tweak for this video is looking out, being aware of fonts. Now I'm going to demonstrate this by up here putting in a new line, and I'm going to type an uppercase I, a lowercase l, and a number 1. Now, since we're just using this tool, this works pretty good because you can see that is immediately, you can see it's an uppercase I, that's a lowercase l, and that's a 1. And so if all you're going to do is use this tool, you're okay. But if you're going to use something else, you could run into trouble. And a lot of times you will be wanting to export this just by getting in this pane and pressing Control A. Now I'm on a Windows machine, and then just copy it and then take it to another application. But here's how it can get tricky in that other application. This is a serif font. Sorry, something got switched on me. This is a serif font. In this case, it's Georgia. And you can see, I'm going to zoom in just a little tighter. You can see that this obviously is an uppercase I. This is a lowercase l, and that's a number 1. This over here is a sans serif font, which is Segoe UI. And that's the uppercase I, that's the lowercase l, and that obviously is the number 1, so that's no problem between 1. But this is, you don't have to waste a lot of brain power figuring out that this is an uppercase I and this is a lowercase l. And if it's in a word, if it's just using these characters in a word, then you can see by the word what it is, but just initials, it makes it hard. So I always try to make the initials in a serif font. And I believe this is the font that's used in the tool. I think it's probably a version of Courier. So in the tool it's fine, you don't have to worry about fonts, but if you export this out of the tool, the initials, then I suggest you make sure you're using a serif font. Now I want to work through one more example using this tool, and that's a scripture, Psalm 40 verse 5. So I'm over here now in the Word Bible software, and of course if you could find this verse anywhere else, it'd be just the same. So I'm going to click on verse 5. This is Psalm chapter 40, verse 5. And I'm going to press F5, which is the copy. I'm going to go to long name. So it's going to put the book name and the translation, the NLT, and then the text. So I'm going to copy and close that. Now I'm back in the tool. I'm going to Control A, delete, Control V. So now I have this as text in here. I'm going to chunk it a little bit. Oh my, Lord my God, enter. 1, 2, 3, 4. Copy. You have performed many wonders for us. I'm going to put in 2 indents there. 2 numeral. Let's see. Your plans are too numerous. You have no equal. And you could, this is all pretty subjective. You could chunk this or structure it any way you want to. I'm going to put in one more there. Okay, now let's see if there's any places I could put some symbols. You have performed many your plans. 2. Okay, we can put a 2 there. 2. You have no equal. If I tried to recite all your wonderful deeds, I would never come to the end. Okay, now we can go ahead and convert. So that's just a second example of how, and this is where it's come in handy for me to learn scripture, or memorize scripture. I've never been able to do it, but this has given me new hope. It's given me kind of a new energy to try it. And by the way, one reason for chunking and structuring is when you're down here trying to figure out which part, where this part links, you can go pretty much with the structure and find those indents. So this has to do with that. Where if this was just in one big block of text, you'd have an awful time trying to figure out, well, where do I find this text in this, or these initials in this text? So that's about it. Again, the method of using initials to represent letter or words to prime the pump so you're going down the right mental pathway has helped me a lot, and I hope it helps you. I'd like to thank the author of this tool. He also has a video. I'll provide an animation of the same material here. I'll provide that below too. And in future videos, again, I'm going to go into more detail about how you can use text editors to streamline the process of both structuring and finding those symbols, and also the initials. That's maybe a little bit more fine-tuned than this in some ways. This is really great though. And these other applications, including FreePlane and text editors, can and 2-pane organizers, I like those a lot too. They can help you create a little bit more of a robust flashcard thing than just scrolling here, although this works pretty good. But one of the problems with this is that right now you're working with one text and one set of initials. But if you say, if I go ahead and reload the page, this is going to strip out all the text here. So I like to use other programs as kind of a repository where I can go back and I can keep this this passage, this verse, together with a lot of other verses. So I hope this has been helpful, and thanks for watching. And I hope you'll come back to watch the other videos that I'm going to make in the future in this series.